3 witnesses scheduled to testify at last week's UFO hearing dropped out at the last minute after receiving calls from the Pentagon. That's according to Congressman Tim Burchett. Here he is on News Nation last night.
You thought there was going to be about half a dozen witnesses, so 6 witnesses. We ended up seeing the 3 witnesses. Was there a plan to have more?
Absolutely. And we had one tell us that he'd received a call from, I guess, maybe the Pentagon, and he or she decided that maybe it wasn't best that they were on there. We had somebody who was an affiliation with NASA, and NASA will say, well, they didn't work for NASA. This is news to us, but it was one of their quasi something, I don't know. But anyway, and they turned us, or they backed out at the end. And then we had one more, I think, that backed out. And, we just had so many roadblocks from even the press conference. We were going to do a press conference to talk about this, myself and 3 others. And a reporter, actually, one of your colleagues, put his microphone down. And I was leaving the Republican conference and said, hey, y'all having this press conference, right? And I said, yeah, it's tomorrow, I think, or whenever. And he said, they put you in a room that's under construction, and it is tiny. I said, he said, this is a big deal. You need to be in the main room. And I was like, what the heck's going on?
Now, if there were double the number of witnesses that were supposed to testify who dropped out because of government intimidation, that's obviously hugely significant and a big deal. I have some questions, however. One, because we were reporting days before the testimony that there were going to be 3, and eventually the names of those 3 came out. We knew for a while that there were going to be 3, and then the names of those 3 came out. If it was the case prior to that there were more that were being intimidated, it's curious why that wasn't a conversation prior to the hearing in a way that might have pressured the government to lay off and make them look bad. Secondly,
I don't think it came up at the hearing. That itself could have come up at the hearing, honestly.
Exactly. Secondly, if these people were folks who were willing to testify, but for being pressured out of it by the government, they've gone from being willing to testify in full to not even being willing to have their names known as prospective witnesses at the hearing. That also feels a little inconsistent to me. And I wonder if this is some face saving for folks who are very invested in the hearing, as we were here on the show, who didn't feel like it was enough new material.
It was not. It was a lot of the same material, and it was a lot of, we know people who know things, but we can't say who they are because their jobs would be in jeopardy, or even their physical safety. There was some. It's been, I think one of the witnesses, it might have been, I think it was Grush, testified that people have been harmed in the course of covering up the evidence of UFOs. That was said. So people fearing not just for their jobs, but for their lives. But what I want to know, it's a little bit like the pressure campaign from the federal government on speech, on social media, COVID speech, Hunter Biden stuff, et cetera. We're like, okay, well, then who is the person who calls you or emails you and says, we, the Pentagon, or we, the NASA, don't want you to testify? Who is that person? That person isn't entitled to secrecy. I want them known. I want to know who is doing the silencing.
Yes.
Who is getting in the way of getting this real information? Let's out them.
Yes.
If we can't out you, the person who has the information, let's out the person who's silencing you. Can we do that?
Yes.
Can we do that discreetly in a way that doesn't reflect back on you? Can we do that?
Yes.
Let's know who's in that position, who's the czar of silence.
And if someone has been physically injured, as a consequence,
that was the allegation that was made.
Who did the injuring?
Yeah.
What organization? What department?
First, I thought they meant the
that?
aliens did the injuring, but I think it's the government now.
I mean, if it's the aliens that are doing the injuring, then certainly out them, because they are owed no protection in
we
the
need
context
to
of our
bring a
legal
workplace,
system.
an OSHA-related lawsuit for the government employees injured by.
Right.
Were you injured by aliens in the course of your duties? You may be entitled to compensation.
Okay. But look, Robbie, I was out last week, so I missed the coverage of the hearing itself, but I was following it somewhat online, and there did seem to be mixed reviews. Some people who thought, these are actors that we've heard from I don't mean actors, but human people, participants in this discourse who we've heard from at length over the course of the last decade or so, and not much new has come out. And others that felt like there was something that was very compelling about having the evidence come out in this formal way in the context of a congressional hearing. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of what we've already heard, and a lot of now Grush and others said they would give information that they have not given if a SCIF, a secure room, can be set up. That's a room where there's no cameras or phones, it's not recorded, so that they can legally give the sensitive information they have. There's some talk of making that happen. That all sounds great, but the problem with that is then it'll be shielded from public view. Then it'll be on people like Tim Burchett and others to use that information, to get that information and then use that to further this investigation. And I feel like without the public's knowledge and then the subsequent the pressure that comes from the public when we're in the loop, there will just be Tim Burchett and co will be hitting roadblocks.
Yeah.
Well, they'll be hitting this wall of silence everywhere they turn.
Yeah, I have, again, I have this kind of like logical side of my brain that is raising red flags in the same way that it's kind of raising these red flags as we get consecutive rounds of inquiry into even the Biden crime family without a smoking gun. If there is information that has not been investigated, then I don't care if there's not a smoking gun. Obviously, if you're keeping me from finding the smoking gun, you should continue doing investigations. But if the investigations have gone forward and there still doesn't seem to be a there, at a certain point it loses steam. And here, again, if the people with the knowledge are both saying how important it is for this stuff to come out and also ultimately unwilling to say publicly what needs to be said to light a fire under the agencies that have knowledge of this.
What are the protections that need to take place, be put into law, be put into, to allow the people who are unwilling to come forward, the three potential witnesses who didn't speak, what assurances do they need that they'll be okay to speak?
Right.
That's what needs to get worked out. Is it, again, for job security, you'll be a very wealthy and successful and famous person if you're the person who actually delivers the evidence of the aliens.
Absolutely.
First of all, now if you fear for your life, okay, what kind of security can you get? What kind of arrangements can be made? Those are the conversations that need to happen now.
Also, is the anonymity helping you? There's a sort of protection that comes with coming out publicly in a mass. What do they do? Kill all of you? At a certain point, that is its own red flag, right? And I don't want to take that too far because there was a time in American history where they really did kill everybody. I mean, you had this mass assassinations, whether it's the Kennedys, MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. You did have assassinations become very, very common as movement leaders were having successes in changing the terrain of American politics and the social contract. So, I don't want to be cavalier with somebody else's life. But again, if you were at a point where you were about to testify, that means somebody knows who you were, their testimony that has been written out, practice sessions that have been done, phone call records to you between you and the senators who are going to, the representatives that were really going to interrogate you. And the evidence is there. You are known. So you're known to everyone who can basically cause you harm, but not to the broader public who would defend you and then look very skeptically if anything were to happen to you. So what is going on here?
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss not to bring up that there have been some who've said that the timing of this investigation and this public interest into aliens at this juncture is suspicious in terms of what it might be covering up, what the other news stories that they don't want us to be talking about. And I did see a number of people pointing to the fact that all of the campaign finance charges against Sam Bankman-Fried were dropped on the same day that this UFO news was all coming out on the internet. And, is there a bipartisan vested interest in letting a huge Republican and Democratic donor like Sam Bankman-Fried, remember he donated unprecedented amounts or just, singularly high amounts, I should say, to the Democratic Party.
They've dropped some of the charges. They've not dropped all of the
campaign finance charges. But these are the charges that implicate the donors, right? These are the charges that implicate the party apparatus. So Sam Bankman-Fried gave to the Democrats. His number two at the company gave similar amounts to the Republicans. This is someone who is doing pay for play, allegedly, at the highest echelons. And now you're having the political apparatus basically say, we're not going to charge you for. We're not going to investigate the campaign finance pay for play allegations, even if you still are going to be on the hook for the financial crimes.
This is fine. There's a little bit of horseshoe theory here because you're saying this from a leftist perspective, and I actually see some conservatives, some right-leaning people say this is where we were starting to win the culture war. We punished Bud Light. Now they're injecting the aliens discourse to distract us from our successful cultural victories. I don't think that's what's going on. We're talking about aliens because News Nation did that interview with David Grush that went really viral. I mean, you and I are choosing to talk about it regularly, not because we're getting any kind of marching orders from anyone, but because there's clear audience interest in it. So that's
right,
I think the people want this. I think that's why.
I think that the interest can be sincere, but I think there's always been public interest in things like aliens. I'm a sci-fi nerd. You love fantasy. There's always an interest. But the question is, why is the corporate media suddenly taking an interest in something that has been indifferent to for all of this time? And is the timing of that convenient? Even if isn't there, are they still using something that's legitimately perhaps a news story? Maybe there are aliens, and at the same time, it can serve as a distraction against other kinds of news stories. Not here, though. We will continue to bring you all of the important news on a daily basis.
Yes. Tomorrow on Rising, Brianna and I will be back to discuss just that. No additional vacations for you, Brianna. You're here all week, whether you like it or not.
I am on the clock officially. Good thing I'm well rested and a happy camper. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Watch the skies. We'll see you tomorrow.